As an overview, I'll say, most people think that something's going to occur in 2012. I mean, I'm sure that everybody here has some idea, that's why you're here, of something they've heard or read or even believe intuitively. What I'm going to go through, of course, is going to be a lot of scientific data, because I'll tell you now that I did not start this by trying to solve the question of 2012. Okay? And I'll go into that in the next slide. It does include some things that will look pretty doomy and gloomy, as you can imagine, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And we'll get into that in great detail as well, because that is the part we're all waiting for, and that's why we're here. This presentation did require me to put some scientific and spiritual information together. And so the presentation, as you're going to see, includes scientific data, ancient history, current events, and future prophecy. All right, so one of the things as a scientist, and also from my experience in the spiritual world, is I started to find that everything's operating on cycles and frequencies. It became more important the more research I did into these topics, but just to give you an overview of some of the concepts of cycles and frequencies, of course we all know that different wavelengths of light have different frequencies, different wavelengths of sound, and different colors all have different frequencies. And especially as regard to rotational properties in the micro and the macro. A micro meaning very small, and we're talking about the atom. It's got a nucleus, it's got protons, electrons, and neutrons rotating around it. Very much like a solar system. Okay, and then you've got planets. They have a rotation, they have orbiting moons, and then they rotate around the sun. Then you have comets, which come in at orbital frequencies. And then you have, of course, solar systems, which have rotational parts, and then all the planets rotate around that. And then you have the galaxy, which is nothing more than a bunch of solar systems rotating around the center. Okay. So, my spiritual evolution and growth and becoming a seeker, I learned to question everything. And I certainly I took it to an extreme in the sense that I paid attention to every thought I had, every conversation, every experience, so that I could grow from it. And I spent a lot of time focusing on that because I wanted to accelerate my growth. I didn't want to wait as long as what some people do. So I put some conscious effort into that, and I paid attention to everything, and I learned from it. So then I answered those questions to my best ability. And of course, as we know, when we ask the questions, we don't always get the answers immediately, and they come when they're supposed to. And so, of course, I had to learn more patience as well. And then after I got very much into that, 10 years down my spiritual path, and I said, well, yeah, I understand how this is all working spiritually, but what happens if I apply this concept to the physical world? What happens if I question the things that don't make sense? So I started with global warming. It didn't feel right inside. Okay, I said, something doesn't feel right with this agenda about it being caused by humans. And so as I researched that, and I'll get into that very quickly here, and what I found is that it answered the question about global warming, but it created new questions. And those questions really took me down a journey, which I'm going to take you down part of that journey. So I wasn't trying to solve the mystery of 2012. And due to the volume of this information, I'll just ask if you hold your questions till the end. All right. So what did I look at first? Well, I don't know if this makes any sense at all, but when I was researching global warming, the first thing I pulled up was the core sample data from the Antarctic. I don't even remember how that happened. All I know is that for some reason I had pulled this up on my computer and I was looking at it. So what we have here is, you're going to see this up at the top, EPICA. That's a European Union core sample data right there. And then Vostok, that's the Russian core sample data there. And of course this at the bottom in the red is what is the ice volume, and you see that low is on top, which is kind of odd, but that's the way they did the graph. Okay, and you see here that this is the period of the Ice Age. Okay, and we came out of the last Ice Age. Most people know that we've been out of the Ice Age for about 13,000 years, which is probably about there. And here's where we started out of it. Okay, so I'm looking at this and I'm like, This is interesting. I'm not sure what it shows. This point over here is pretty interesting to me, where we are and how long we've been out of the Ice Age. But here's what I found. I found there was a pattern. And like I said, we've been out of the Ice Age for 13,000 years, which is about there. I saw this heat spike here, whether it's completely accurate or not. It shows that we, as a planet, were about 3 degrees centigrade hotter across the entire planet about, maybe 10,000 years ago. So, as a result, I concluded that, well, we haven't been here burning fossil fuels for 13,000 years. And certainly we didn't create that extra heat spike at 10,000 years. It pretty much proved to me that we weren't responsible for global warming. Whether we've added anything to it or not may still be indeterminate. But the pattern. I saw a pattern and I said, okay, well, why isn't anybody talking about a pattern of ice ages? If you look at this pattern, it turns out that between the ice ages, it's about 100,000 years exactly. And the time we're out of the Ice Age, you can see here, over here, where the planet starts to heat up, okay, is exactly where the ice starts to melt. And you can see that here as well. Planet starts to heat up, and the ice starts to melt right there. All right, so where we are, here we are. Planet started to heat up about 20,000 years ago, and of course the ice started melting. So not only are the ice ages 100,000 years apart, but I started to look at these phases where it's warm. Okay, here, the older the data is, the carbon dating could be a little less accurate, but 30,000, 20,000 years, 15,000 years, 15,000 years, and 20,000 years. So I said, okay, so this point right here is where we're at, the 0 point. According to this graph, we should be going into an ice age at any moment in time. I mean, that was pretty significant because I wasn't even looking for it. Now you see here that this temperature range, you can see that, and when we're in an ice age, it's somewhere between 6 and 9 degrees cooler across the planet. And when we come out of the ice age, you can see here, we weren't even as hot as we were the last time we came out of an ice age. We were 6 degrees hotter across the planet at one point the last time we came out of an ice age. And you can also see here that when the ice volume reaches this low point, which is where that dotted line is right there, which is where we are, that's usually when we're triggered back into a new ice age. Okay, so I thought that was pretty significant. So one of the things that you have to consider is that the ice is carbon dated. And so carbon dating, some people can question the accuracy because I've heard a lot of research and they say, well, it's not accurate at all. It's kind of accurate, and it depends whether you're carbon dating organic or inorganic material. I'm not an expert on carbon dating, so we'll just say that there could be some variance of error in the data itself, but that would affect the whole stream of data, and so that you can still see there's a pattern. So the ice age pattern is approximately 100,000 years between ice ages. The warming period is approximately 20,000 years. And so we're in an ice age for 80,000 years. And we're entering an ice age at any moment in time. So I asked, well, what causes this pattern? I was curious. And why is no one talking about it? I was really curious. I'm like, this seems to be pretty important news.